finished playing Donkey Kong, the NES port of it, based on the arcade version original. So we'll go ahead and give our thoughts on that real quick before we move on to Junior. What are you thinking, Gray, about Donkey Kong? Aside from the lag,
Um,
because that just can happen with
yeah,
Nintendo
that's
Online.
just our problems ourselves, our internet connections, I guess.
I
But
guess.
like a lot of these other NES titles, they just feel so much better suited to an arcade experience where you're
Hmm.
playing for like a couple of minutes
Yep.
at a time, and not like obviously this isn't a game you'll want to play for like hours and hours on end. I actually don't think anyone would actually want to do that unless you're trying to like break a record or get a
Exactly.
high score or
Like you,
something.
and then you'd have to be at the
Um,
arcade cabinet for like priority, or whatever. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah, because it's also challenging because it was an arcade game because it was meant to uh, get a lot of quarters, from these
Mm-hmm.
kids,
Mm-hmm.
adults. I know you and I both watched some of that documentary, the high score documentary. So I feel like
Yes.
our
Yes.
arcades are on my mind a lot lately.
Yeah.
Like,
Especially, I
oh,
was. It was the same for me too, and it's funny. Like, and we'll come back to the Donkey Kong section in a second because I do actually want to touch on that for real quick because I'm
yeah,
glad. Have you seen the first episode so far?
yeah. I think I just saw. Yeah, I think I just watched the first one.
Okay, yeah, but like the first episode in particular really got me thinking about that. It got me thinking about what my gaming tastes were on that first episode because obviously when arcades were first coming becoming a thing, that was pretty much what you had a choice of. Like there was a few computer games there at the time, but really it was just like you're playing these short games that are meant to like take you out and you're trying to get the highest score possible for the quarter that you put in. And
Mm,
games like that still exist today. Like not only can you get a lot of these classic games today in like modern consoles, like much like we're doing now, but there's also a lot of new games that are based on you dying and you're just trying to get the highest score. That's roguelike games, for example.
yeah,
Like that's what they're all about. So
or mobile games too.
a
That's so
lot,
funny you mentioned
yeah,
that.
mobile games do it too because they're trying. Like some of the mobile games are really disgusting with those things because they're trying to get you to spend as much
Yeah,
money as possible. Um, I personally don't mess with the ones that are that predatory. Like I can usually identify it pretty quickly. But yeah,
yeah,
those games they're still out there today. But thinking about it, like I can always appreciate a good quick arcade game as long as it plays fine and whatever. Especially if it's at home because then if it's hard, I'll just figure it out. I don't have to worry about like spending endless quarters or whatever what have you to just get to the next level. So, but that being said, I've always been the more of the gamer that enjoys like story driven experiences. Like I enjoy like making progression. I can play an arcade game as long as there's some kind of progression happening. Like even with a game like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, like those are like randomly generated dungeons, which I usually hate. Randomly generated anything, but the story was still happening. Like you would go into the random dungeon, but you were still making progress through a story. So I
hmm
was able to forgive it for that. Um, it's also why I'm looking forward to that indie game Hades because it's a lot of the same thing. But yeah, anyway, getting off that subject, going back to Donkey Kong. Yeah, it's a fun arcade game for sure. Um, like it's like again, if you're not dealing with like any kind of lag, it's just a fun game because you'll eventually like figure it out as you go. Especially if you're having the home console version, then you have unlimited time to figure out how to get through the levels, the timing for the jumps, what the hammers do, how long they'll last, how to get
yeah.
through each specific levels. There's a certain joy to that once you start figuring things out, and then you get a joy of like going as far as possible. We got a bunch of that with Mario Brothers, but that was a very different experience because we were also directly cooperating. While Donkey Kong is very much in the line of like the original arcade games that you take turns. So
Yeah.
how good you do is 100% based on you alone as a player. Similar to Super Mario Brothers 2 when we were doing that too. But yeah, Donkey Kong, it's just like, can you beat your friend a high score? It's not much of a two-player mode, but I'm still happy that it exists all the same because you can like directly compete in that sense, or see what your friend did and then try to learn from that as well. So in that way, you can also like work together. Now, as far as this version of it, I will say I think I definitely do prefer the arcade version. Like if you really enjoy this game, I would say get the arcade one. It's $5, so it's a little more expensive than I would like. But if it's a game that you really enjoy, you want to have it on your Switch, you would. But that being said, this version I think is fine, and you can play online with a friend. So that's worth it on its own. So that's my thinking on it. What were you thinking?
Yeah, like if I was in the arcade, I would totally probably play this game. Like I always end up playing Donkey Kong or Mario, or Mario Brothers, or at the arcade or whatever. It's just like it's challenging, so it's hard to like recommend it to people who like want to have an easygoing like gaming experience for people who like don't play games.
Right.
And it's also like kind of stiff. Like you said, like the controls are a particular way, and like, you kind of have to play it a couple of times to get the feel for how you should be controlling Mario and how you should be jumping over these barrels and stuff.
Exactly.
And then like you touched on earlier too, like even though the game is basically pretty simple from the outside looking in, but there's so many little things that pro players will start to like realize once you play like over and over again.
For sure.
Like the way the direction he throws his barrels, or like the best route of action to get to the top of the tower or whatever. So there's a lot of like little things to like
little nuances,
focus on, pay attention to. Yeah, little intricacies there.
For sure.
And for being such an old game, you know, it's still really fun to play.
Yeah, I agree. So I think my conclusion out of this is, if you really want, you know, it's like pretty much any like fun arcade game. If you want, like, it's free if you have the NES online or the Switch online. So it's a fun little 2-player game you can play with friends. I think in that respect it still holds up because it works well as long as your connection is good, so you don't get the lag. And I find if you really, really enjoy the game, then spring for the arcade version, because I think that would be an even better version of this game. But for a version that you can play online with friends, I think this is perfectly fine. And I think it still holds up today, in my opinion. It's still fun to play for like a few minutes, like most arcade games. So, that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the